Welcome to Act 3, the podcast where we explore how to thoughtfully shape the rest of our lives. I'm your host, Cara Gray. This podcast is sponsored by Good Morning Freedom, my retirement coaching service where I help executives and professionals plan their Act 3. For more information, stay tuned until the end. Today, I welcome Scott Wozniak to the podcast. Scott is the CEO of Swoz Consulting, has consulted with leaders on 6 continents, including Silicon Valley startups, family enterprises, and Fortune 500 companies. Scott is a member of Mensa, the International Genius Society, reads over 200 books each year, and has written 4 books himself. He earned a master's degree in business with an emphasis in organizational leadership and has worked with some of the leading brands of our time, including multiple Silicon Valley unicorns and Nucor Steel. He also spent 8 years as an employee at Chick-fil-A headquarters, working directly with the founding family and executive team to design leadership development programs, set strategy, and lead company-wide upgrades. And though he is not an employee there anymore, he regularly consults with their leaders. Before becoming a business consultant, Scott worked in nonprofit work, primarily with children through sports camps, inner-city programs, and a national tour of stadium-filling conferences, complete with rock bands and comedians. And before all of that, Scott was on the stages all over the United States for 18 years as a child actor, including a Christmas special on NBC, and an internationally touring singer in 2 choirs. Scott lives in Atlanta with his wife and 4 children. In his spare time, he continues to write music, design board games, serve in several local nonprofits, and push his boundaries through a variety of extreme sports, from heli-skiing to kite surfing. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Cara. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so when I first heard your story and connected with you on LinkedIn, I was like, I got to have this guy on as a guest. I mean, you have not only retired once, you have retired 3 times. And have gone through several transitions, and that's what this podcast is all about, telling the stories of people in their 3rd act. And this might be your 4th or 5th act by now. I mean, it's been a lot. I'm not exactly sure where to start, but maybe let's start with your first career as a professional actor. I definitely want to hear all about it, but I'm also most interested in the transition between acts, if you will. And what that looked like from one journey to the next.
Yeah. So how I got into it is, I think, important to talking about how I got out of it.
Yes.
I got into it, honestly, because my mother was a theater director. And so I was 4 years old when I did my first role. And I don't mean like I was, the cloud in the kindergarten play. Like, it was a big adult production. And they needed a kid role. And so I don't honestly think there was a casting call. I think my mom was like, listen, I'm bringing my kid to the show anyway. Let's try to give him the lines. And I did a good job, enough at least that they were like, yeah, let's do that again. And so when I was 5, I did another play. And by the time I was 10, I was traveling around, winning competitions and doing tours. Again, NBC, all that fun stuff. But I didn't get into it when you're 4. I'm not like doing a deep soul searching strategy on like, who am I and what do I really want to do with my life? Like, what do you say to a 4-year-old when they don't throw up on stage, right? You say, hey, good job, honey, right? You're good at this. So with all the discernment of a 4-year-old, I'm like, listen, everyone tells me I'm good at this. Like, I should do more. And what do you know, if you grow up on it? I mean, I had one-on-one tutors and private lessons and got into some elite performing troupes. You get pretty good at something when you grow up doing it. And so here's the reason I say all that is because now I get into my early 20s. I actually got my first degree in musical theater performance. I'm doing professional work. And honestly, I'm now finally starting to have these actual thoughtful conversations and life reflections on who am I and what do I really want to do with my life? And I began to realize this isn't it. Now, I was good. I was getting paid money to be a lead performer in the shows. I mean, it was working, right?
Mhm.
And it was the time where it was like I've been dabbling in the big cities. I'll just be honest. I was a regional star, and it was time to like, are you going to go national, international? Like, move to LA or New York. I'm going to go
Yeah.
stay on your screen, pick one of your cities, and you got to go all in. and that's where I was making that tough choice, and I'd done it for at that, 22, 18 years, and I'd been like, "You know, I don't think this is actually what I wanna do." And I will say this to a lot of folks when I mentor now, and it might be the first, piece of insight I can share, talk about transitions.
Mhm.
And I'll say, "Lid, just because you can doesn't mean you should." And I think a lot of people build their life and career around, "Hey, I'm good at this thing, so I guess that has to be my path. Like, I have to stay on this journey. Sorry, you're good at it, so that's what you do."
Yep.
And I think and so for me, it happened to be the stage, which might be more exotic than some people, but I mean, I've got a lot of friends who they were good at math. So their family and friends, they mean well. They're this isn't bad advice in the sense of like they're trying to be jerks. They're like, "Oh, you're good at math. You should be like an accountant, right? You should go into finance." Well, maybe, but there are actually a dozen, maybe 100 different ways you could apply math, reasoning, and that kind of analytical skills. um, and the fact is most people don't know what else you could do with it, so they push you down this path. "Hey, you're good with people, you should go into sales or something," right? And we pick these very generic things because we don't know any better. Your family and friends don't know. I didn't know any better. And so
Sure.
I end up down this road with a career that, yes, I am good at it. And it wasn't actually what I loved most, what I wanted to do best. And we'll get into other stuff I do, but I will say I have found a way to use those skills. I spent. I'm not. I don't. I was about to say I didn't do. I've not done any performing since then. For the record, I was a wise man in my church's kind of Christmas Eve
Nativity. Yeah.
pageant. I walked down the aisle. I heard. I don't think that counts. So like since then, I really haven't performed in a proper show, but I use those skills all the time in totally different ways. And so, yeah, this was like the big aha for me because I was like, why do I have all these skills and what do we do? And maybe is there meaning? And I happen to think there is a purpose. And so I go through all that and it's like, oh, the obvious use for those skills may not be what your actual career is. And you can walk away from the industry but not walk away from yourself or your career, and so yeah, man, it was this, like it was a terrifying choice. I'm sure I'm not the first person to talk about that, right?
Yeah.
It's all you've ever known, and you're like, "I don't know what else I would do." Like, this is my degree, this is all my friends, this is my
Yep.
entire resume. Like, who am I if I'm not this industry? Um, but in my case, I was young enough for my first retirement here that it was like, "Really? Really? You're gonna spend the rest of your life knowing that this is not actually what you wanna do with your life?" And there was some real switching cost in the process. Uh, but man, yeah, that was the big like, okay, yes, I have skills in it, but that doesn't mean that's what I'm actually supposed to do with my life.
So what was your process
Mm.
or your thought tran process to move to the next stage of working in corporate, right?
Yeah, okay, so I didn't go to corporate. This is what you mentioned when you heard the bio, the nonprofit side,
Oh, the
right?
nonprofits are next. Yes,
No,
sorry.
yes, but that's this key because I was like, I don't wanna be a corporate drone, which ironically, I end up working for a massive multi-billion dollar company, right? Um, but I'm like, I'm trying to make a difference with my life and get creative, and so I actually had a chance to go do this stadium tour, and so
Okay.
this transition was like, well, I could use my stage skills
Yep.
and I don't want to be the guy on stage this time. What if I run the backstage and we'll put together these big events it was for youth and we parents and teens come together. We make it hype and fun, but we talk about how to build good relationships. And so we kind of got to do these cool stuff. So I traveled around the country, filling stadiums and hyping up again, not me on the stage, behind the stage. Nobody would have known my name was on it. And in the process of that, that got me connected with a youth camp, which got me connected with inner city programs. And so I was like, man, I love serving these kids, and we're putting on
Yeah.
events and building relationships and started doing mentoring. Um, and okay, so here was the shift. This is interesting on helping me figure out what I really want to do. I was good at that too, in the sense that like, yeah, it used a lot of my same skills
Mhm.
and I love those kids. But it was less of a strategic shift and like, well, there's an opportunity. Like, what else could I do with my skills, right? Okay, so I go through this process and I was trying to figure out how to put this politely. Well, I'll just play it bluntly. I worked for some really nice guys who had great hearts and were terrible leaders. I mean, like really bad. And and they meant well. Like, to this day, some of them are still my good friends. Like, they're nice guys.
Not everyone is supposed to be a leader.
Well, they had no idea what they were doing, right?
Yeah,
These are
that's
okay,
very
and then
true.
I'm sitting on my high horse here. I had no idea what I was doing either, right? There was no leadership training on my stage stuff. I don't know what you've heard or seen kind of the stereotypes about the prima donna actors, but it's a real thing. Like, this is not good leadership. Like, I'm not saying I was a big prima donna. What I'm saying is in my world, if I was just not a jerk, I was pretty good, right? Like, and so I say all that to say, like, we had no idea what we were doing. I was one of the bad leaders, and it caused chaos, and the organization struggled. And on the surface, we put on good events, and behind the scenes, we were churning through our staff, and people were like leaving and frustrated,
Mm,
and not because they were like immoral or illegal, but it was because they didn't know how to run a meeting. They didn't know how to make good decisions. They would promote inconsistently and, like, change the plan. People are like, "What are we doing here?" And so okay. So I say all that because I was talking to a mentor, like, "What's going on and how do I do this?" And they handed me a business book. And honestly, at first, Kara, I was like, listen, I'm like this creative. I don't do this accounting crap, right? Like,
right.
don't bother me." And he's like, "Read the book, you moron." So I finally read the book, and I stayed up till 2 a.m. reading that book like it was a novel, because it was the first time in my life I had words to describe the problems I was facing. Like, no one had ever talked to me about leadership and structure and strategy and systems and the stuff now that I do full time. And it was like, "Whoa," like, oh, because again, before I'm like, "He's not a jerk, but he's a bad leader." Like, what do you do with that? I didn't know what else to do with that. And so,
What
plus
book was
reading
that?
all the what?
What book is that?
Okay, so it's an old classic of leadership, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. So
Thank you.
it's not the most advanced leadership book, but it's exactly what I needed, because it just covers in 21 very short chapters. Here's a principle of leadership. Here's a principle, just like little bite-sized, almost like TikTok clips. But this is 30 years ago. This is long before TikTok, but it's like he wrote it in that little. These are little snippets. And it was just enough to be like, "Wait, this is what I was trying to figure out." And so I read everything he wrote at the time, which, by the way, that's a beautiful irony, because my last book, irony is the wrong word, full circle story. It's kind of
Mhm.
poignant for me. My last book I actually published with John Maxwell and his team. And so,
Oh,
um,
wow.
it's super fun. 30 years later, we're partnering on projects together. But
Whoa.
yes, so back then it was like, oh, so I was reading books, going to conferences, doing all this stuff, and this would be maybe my second transition insight I would share for my story here.
Mhm.
I picked this next one because I'm like, I want to make a difference. Nonprofits, kids, right? That's noble. I want to do something meaningful with my life, but it wasn't really tied to something specific. And as you can see, I kind of zigzagged from like sports camps to inner city to stadium stuff. Like, I don't know, I'm helping kids.
Yeah.
And here's really where the focus came. Like, what would I really wanna stay with long term? And it came to this. I was shaking my fist one day, like, "It's not right that the world's held back for bad leaders. Somebody should do something about this." And honestly, so I happen to be a Christian. I felt like God was just kinda elbowing me in
Mhm.
that moment, like, "Yeah, somebody should do something about this." Like, "Huh, maybe there's a problem. Like, what are you gonna do about it?" And this is the insight I now talk to folks about. I'll say, "Hey, sometimes your calling, your purpose, the passion that might keep you going, um, that might be found in your greatest frustration. That thing that you're so upset about might actually be the clue to what you could do with your life. Instead of sitting around complaining, what if you stepped up and made a difference in that zone?" And it's often out of this pain, this righteous indignation, like, "No, pound the table. It's not right. No, we shouldn't do this." That passion is not unique. Like, everyone doesn't have the same things that get them equally upset. And so for me, like, I'll put it this way, it's a little silly. I can't watch the TV show The Office. I'm assuming you've seen The Office.
I
It's
have.
it's
Yeah.
genius, right?
Yeah.
Listen,
Brilliant.
I can't not watch it because 'cause I'm upset at it. Like, it's brilliant, it's clever, I respect the show, um, but literally, like, my whole career since then has been somebody ought to do something. Like, I can't handle bad leaders, and so I've never made it through an episode of The Office. I can't do it. Like, at some point,
Mhm.
30, 45 minutes into it, I'm like, I gotta go write a
Too
blog
much.
post or,
Yeah.
like, call somebody, like, they can't somebody ought to my wife's like, "It's a comedy, right? Nobody's taking this seriously, Scott. Calm down." And I'm like, "No, you don't understand. That's, like, one of the key leadership principles." She's like, "Okay, go make a podcast about that or something."
Yeah, that show does hit a little close to home for some people in certain office
It's a brilliant
situations.
show. But for me, it's the pain that got me to say, "Hey, maybe I should do something about it." And then they make clever little jokes about that. And I'm like, "That's not funny." Okay, it is actually. Um, but that kind of clue, if you're that kind of person, right? Like everyone else is like, "Why you what's this such a big deal, man? Like, why don't you chill out?" Maybe, just maybe, that's a clue to what you can do, what you really would wanna do if you really could. And that this is the retirement thing.
Mhm.
You retire, and if you just sit around and do nothing, you're gonna die. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
we
you are, like, legitimately, like, that's a
literally,
thing.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. We were not made to be idle. Now,
No.
I'm all about a vacation. Like, there are rhythms, right? We should stop and catch our breath, and maybe if you've been grinding, I'm sure other folks in your show have talked about this, you might wanna take an extended break, like, more than a
Yes.
week, right? Like, maybe
Yes.
a few months to, like, recover and think and process. But we were made to be in motion,
Mhm.
physically, mentally, relationally, and when you don't have something to pursue, you wither. And so the question then begs, what would you do? What would and it often for me is found, it's in your deepest frustration. What if you could do something about that? And that becomes a perennial kind of fire that keeps you going. That's like especially let's think about retirement, right? Hey, I don't a lot of us got to the retirement phase, right? I don't need to work anymore for the core
Yeah.
finances.
Yep.
So what do I do? And if all you've been doing is working to pay the bills, you left with this empty man, that for me has been huge unlock is man, I've been super successful since then and I don't have to work as hard as I work.
Yeah.
But man, like, I'm still fired up about, like, this is not okay, and when it works, I get really delighted and, like, deeply satisfied, like, "Oh, look at that. That team is thriving. Isn't that great?" So yeah, that's been those are the 2 big arc moments. I'm like, "Oh, at first I was just pursuing, 'Hey, I'm good at it. I make money. I guess I should keep going.'" And then I was willing to walk away from that and start figuring it out, but it took me several years of doing stuff that was good work, noble work,
Yep.
but not really my passion or my calling until I found kind of the pain point that the man was like, "This unlocks a lot of things for me." So yeah, that's so then I went became a consultant and I was building my own thing and my so here's
No,
the
wait a minute, we skipped the Chick-fil-A years.
this is what I was getting there. So here's
Okay, okay.
the connection. So I did. I became a consultant, went to grad school. One of my professors in grad school on my second year said, "Hey, really loved working with you this last year, like in class. Would you want to do some side work with me?" So I started doing consulting on the side while I was finishing up school.
Mhm.
When I graduated, he had a consulting agency on the side, a coaching training company thing, and then he hired me to work full time. And then 3 months later, he said he wanted to retire and asked if I would take over his coaching company. And so was doing leadership coaching, super fun. I had moved away to go to grad school in Virginia Beach. I met my wife there. We married, had our first couple kids. I'm running this consulting agency, like living the dream, right? Like I've arrived.
Yeah.
Now Chick-fil-A comes in. Man, unexpected opportunity. So I happened to go to high school with a guy named Andrew Cathy back in Atlanta is where I graduated high school. And Andrew happens to be the grandson of the founder of Chick-fil-A. And Chick-fil-A is a wholly private company. Founder totally bootstrapped it. His 3 kids, they're three. I mean, Andrew just took over as the CEO about 2.5 years ago when we're this recording. And so like, dude, they're good people. Like, I grew up with them. They're just salt of the earth, regular folks who've really just put their heart and soul into saying, "Hey, how do we serve with excellence?" And so, we liked
Mhm.
them. Good luck, but 30-ish years ago in high school, I graduate. Andrew and I played 3 sports and rode dirt bikes and great guys, right? But I wasn't taking this to work. It's fast food, right? I wasn't gonna go. It's like, "Hey, good luck with your little restaurant company. Hope you guys make it." Yeah, they're they're gonna make it. For
Yeah.
those If you don't know, Chick-fil-A is one of the top fast food it's one of the top restaurants in
Yeah,
America, in the fast food category, but
yeah.
they get crazy high scores, raving fans, all that stuff. They're on track to be maybe 23 to 24 billion in sales this year, so, yeah, they're doing
They're
okay.
doing okay. Yeah.
So 15 or so years ago, I'm this consultant doing this cool stuff now, had figured out my calling, and my friends from Chick-fil-A, I'm back in Atlanta hanging with my friends and family, and they're like, "Hey, um, what if you come do that stuff for us?" Because remember in high school, I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go be a star, good luck with your restaurant." They're like, "Wait, what are you're a consultant now and you strategy?" And we could use some of that. And so honestly, I had to get over a couple of hurdles in my own mind here too, because I'm like, listen, I didn't do all this to go into fast food, right? Like it's not a sexy industry. So I'm like, and I was kind of running my own deal. And so I was gonna have to go be an employee of something. That was
Mhm.
a big company, but um, and so there's a bunch of processing on like, why would I do this? And what's this about? And I'll tell you, it came down to a couple things. One, uh, they were doing more good in the world just through simple, practical service things than I realized, and it really tied a couple of things together. They see a lot of the work they do as kind of raising up leaders, so they're franchised. So they do partnership.
Okay.
They really the headquarters is a consulting agency that pours into the franchisees and gives them advice and tools and ideas as they run
Mhm.
their business.
Mhm.
They're like, "We're a consulting agency. We don't actually run the restaurants, they do. We are leadership and strategy and culture and operations and measurements and technology, and we help people like, we advise them and they run their businesses." And I was like,
That's a
"Oh,
cool model. Yeah.
I'm actually running a consulting agency." They're like, "We are too." Yes, there are guys who run restaurants. We don't actually do Chick-fil-A doesn't actually do it. The headquarters doesn't
Mhm.
do the running of the restaurants. And so that was like, "Oh, this actually work is more what I thought it was." And then the second, honestly, was my role. It was such a unique role, Kara. So I didn't end up like I was like, "I don't run restaurants. What do you want me to do?" Here's what they said. "We have those guys. They're doing a great job. We wanna keep growing this thing, kinda building it big picture. So here's what my job ended up being. 50% of the time, I traveled the world going inside other companies and just learn how they do it. They're like, we know these people. We'll get you in the doors. Can you just go learn? Figure out how the best in the world actually function. Not just restaurants, any company.
Mhm.
And then the other half is come back and turn it into some sort of improvement program at Chick-fil-A. Like just go learn the cool, we'll give you focus areas. And then like, hey, we need to learn how to do this. Go hang out with the 7 best companies in the world who do it. Spend a year or two learning everything. Come back, spend a year or so making it work for us. Repeat.
Yeah.
It was like the coolest job title. Well, my title was very vague. My title was organizational effectiveness consultant. Make the organization effective. Like
Yes.
well, super vague, but the work was really cool. And so I left my own gig because, and this was kicker, I thought I could grow more. And so that might be the bonus thing is you're thinking about long term.
Mhm.
Man, it's lifelong learning. It's just continuous growth. I'm just so not interested. Like honestly, I'd gotten my company then into a rhythm and we were rolling and it was rocking and the like why would I leave running my own deal to go be an employee again and move my whole family from Virginia to Georgia and this whole like switch um because man, the growth that would come out of and did come out of that. I mean, I learned 10 times more doing that job than I did getting my master's, and I had a great master's program.
Yeah.
It was just and so I just I now I'm more and more I optimize for growth. The life choices I make, the friendships, the projects I even pick to do in my current company now. Growth, growth, growth. If you optimize for growth, oh, all the other stuff follows.
I
And
agree.
so that really kicked it. It was yes, it was actually a consulting company. It was closer than what I realized, but man, I was gonna grow more working for them than I could do on my own. But like by 10, by 100x. I mean, it was just well, it was a dream scenario for that. So that was the next big transition was like, well, maybe things are working here but I think I'm gonna grow a whole lot more over here.
Mhm.
So I'll take a step back in title. It was clear,
Yeah.
like they were already grooming Andrew and all that for CEO space, and so like I
You
was
knew
not
that wasn't
yeah,
yeah.
Everybody knew that was awesome, and for the record, Andrew's doing a phenomenal job. He's great. I have 0 like, I should not be the CEO, even if no one ever wanted me to, and I didn't ever think I was supposed to. So, it's clearly one of this, like, "I'm CEO over here, and I'm gonna run this here, like, what do we do?" And it was like, "No, growth, man. Growth is more important than a title. Growth is more important than whatever." Now I'm an employee at a fast food joint, right?
Yeah. Well,
I I
not
wish I could
really.
say I came to that quickly, but I had to get over some kind of image ego stuff in that in
Sure.
fact, they'd invited me to a meeting just to talk about, like, we wanna talk about what you would do with us," and I was like, it took me a month to reply to the email because I kept dragging my feet like, My wife, again, she's often been the wisdom that kept me, doing dumb stuff, and she was kinda like, "It doesn't hurt you to take a phone call, man, like, they're your friends. Just do." So finally, I gave in and did a meeting, and then they pitched their idea, and it blew my mind. So, yeah, the ego aspect of I wanted my title to big fancy, like, who cares? Maximize your growth, and you'll end up having a much better life than kind of an empty title that you aren't learning or growing or there's nothing new or interesting, and
Yeah,
so
that's
that
kind of a cool, like, identity hack. You know what I mean? Like, so many people when they transition into whatever their retirement is gonna be, like, this
Mhm,
loss of identity is huge. So I love that advice of focusing on growth because, yes, it's lifelong learning. If you're not growing, you're not alive, or you're not living,
yes.
living. So I love that's the conclusion that you came to as well,
Yeah, and
even in the midst of this.
I'll double click on that because it's just I think
Yeah,
it's such a big thing for late stage life and career. A lot of our identity, and me myself included, I mean, I just talked about this, but I think this is a normal human thing. We find a lot of security and comfort in being good at something,
mhm,
right? We spend a
mhm,
long time getting there, and it's an uncomfortable, the uncertainty of being the young newbie who doesn't know what they're doing, and man, we finally get to a place where you have skills and you earn respect, and that's both the title, but also it's very internal. It's this
mhm.
like one of the most profound questions I was asked was, "Why do you like yourself?" And it's a really interesting question. Like when you do, because then maybe I don't always do, right? When you
None of us
do,
always do.
why do you like yourself? And even then when you don't, why not? And it
Yeah,
gets this really insight, like of this is some of the deepest layers of our identity. When I'm upset, what do I try to soothe myself? Well, at least I'm fill in the blank, right? Or
yeah,
these people don't know. I'm really fill in the blank. Or when I beat myself up, it's like I'm such a because I didn't like where are the what are those blanks? And a lot of us, for me, I'll just say, at least for me, it was a lot tied to my my technical skill, my competency in the job, my ability to do this kind of I know this space, I know this industry. Okay. And why am I going here? Because that is diametrically opposed to learning and staying alive. Because when you park and camp and rest your security and your comfort in I'm good at this thing, then you actually create this massive problem. If I'm gonna try to keep learning, you have to go into zones where you're not good at it. And and then I
yeah,
get super insecure, and
yeah,
this was the first half of my life. It's like I'm super insecure and nervous and oh no, because I just want to retreat back to the stuff I'm already good at.
yeah.
And we've spent 30
Human
years.
nature.
Yeah, it's a fundamental
Yeah,
process. However, we are actually most alive when we have at least one zone in our life where we're out of our comfort zone.
that's right.
And my favorite story of this is one of the things, I remember when I read and learned about this was, like, shock and, oh, man, I really it's just stuck with me ever since, 15, 20 years now. Probably gonna mess up his name, but it's the founder of judo, the guy who created the martial art form judo. I think gosh, it's like Jiro or Jiro Ikori, I'm not sure which one's first and last name,
Yeah,
but the founder of judo, that part I'm confident of. He was actually it's a bit of a story. He was actually a master of 6 other forms of martial arts and then made his own. He's, like, considered one of the greatest martial artists in the last, like, 1,000 years, like, truly one of the true masters. Literally invented a whole new form that judo's not like a lot of the other forms. It's, like, this really unique style. So master, and so what but one of the great debates was this. when he's getting ready to die. He had kind of a slow death that was allowed him to see it and plan it and talk about it, and is an old
Mhm.
man, highly respected. And they said, "Well, master, which belt are you gonna be buried in? Right? Which of the 7 black belts that you have would you like to be identified in? Like, what's your burial setup?" And he said, "None of them. Bury me in my white belt." Now, if you know anything about martial arts, white
It's
belt
like
is
the lowest.
yes, like, I'm a
Yeah.
brand new guy. I walked in, I literally don't know how to stand or make a fist, right? Like, I'm a 7-year-old kid, I'm a newbie. I happened to do that when I was, gosh, in my 20s. I tried a new martial art, and I'm there I am standing next to 7-year-old kids, and we're all wearing white belts.
Yeah.
It's the total biscuit, and he said, "I am most proud of my ability to learn and stay open and see myself as a beginner, than I am of any of the accomplishments I made." And so that's the mindset that I'm trying. I was gonna say I have. I'm working on having. It's all too easy to slide back into, like, comforting myself because 'cause I'm really good at XYZ. It's like, no, no. The most important thing I'm good at, and this is where I'm kinda trying to hack this, is like, you know what I'm good at? I'm good at becoming a learner and being a beginner and being good at figuring, and it allows me to both have this, "Hey, I've got a skill. I'm comfort," like, I'm not a total moron all the time. I'm not beating myself up, but I'm also not making myself comfortable because I have to prove that I'm the best one in the room and I got this figured out. Like, no, I don't have this figured out. And that's the fun. And that's where I'm my so that this challenge, if we don't wrestle with this, we get stuck because we build a life and career of excellence
Yep.
that allows us to retire, and then we're afraid to do anything that we aren't already good at
Right.
because it stirs up all this terrible insecurity that we spent 30, 40 years of our career trying to get away from. And if you don't, you'll never learn. And if you never learn, as we just been saying, you'll wither. And so this is the place I'm trying to, like, perennially bring myself back to. What is it I'm learning that I'm not good at? Like, where's the
Mhm.
news zone in my life? Even if it's something silly and simple, like a pick up a musical instrument or
Yeah.
study, a new technical area or become a part of a new organization and you don't know how these guys work and what the rules of this new group is. Like, just
Yeah.
find something new on a doesn't have to be all day every day, but,
No.
at least one small thing every couple years, you're like, "I'm trying a new thing. I'm trying a new thing." That is one of the most key things I think for being alive and healthy, and I would say pre or post-retirement, but then a
Yeah, both.
in retirement because, um, honestly, so in my company, like right now, I'll give you a real example. I've spent so eventually Chick-fil-A, this is a whole other I wrote a couple books. People asked me to leave Chick-fil-A and speak on the outside. I was like, well, I'll do a speaking event, but I'm not leaving my job. So I'd take a vacation day and do this thing or here. And that built and built and built. And it was actually one of my mentors at Chick-fil-A that said, "Hey, maybe you should go pursue this stuff." And so we had a bunch of long conversations. I was like, "Is there a problem?" He's like, "No, no. Well, selfishly, we'll keep you for the next 20 years, but man, these are just not normal requests. Maybe you should think about it." And so lots of thought and prayer later, I left the comfort zone of Chick-fil-A to rebuild this time my own consulting agency from
Yep.
scratch. And that's been phenomenally awesome. And it was a wild, risky moment, but man, it took off. We've got 16 folks on staff now, and we do a lot of great stuff.
Nice.
But it's been in-person elite company consulting. Like, we send teams of 3 to 4 people, high-end, personalized stuff. It's marvelous, right? I'm
Mhm.
Chick-fil-A. By the way, the first client to sign me was Chick-fil-A. So felt like I was taking this crazy risk, and as soon as I left, they're like, "And how do we get you back?" And so
They're
they're
like,
still
"Well,
working
you can hire my company."
they've been a great client every year since. But I say all that to say it's been all this in-person stuff,
Yeah.
and this year, like a month ago, as of this recording, we launched our first ever online program.
Oh,
I have
cool.
done 0 work up until this past year. No, I spent the last 9 months working on this, but I was like, this kind of in-person high-end consulting, that's rolling. It's an engine, it's just cranking it out. This is a whole other market with a whole other way of getting clients, and, like, I take the same concepts, but I have to turn them into digital tools and
Mm.
stuff that you don't need me to personally sit down with you and work through, and that's a whole other process. how you market it and who our audience is. This tends to be more small business versus big business.
Yep.
The ideas are the same and almost everything else is different, and I gotta tell you, Kara, the learning that's coming out of that is more exciting to me than, "Oh, yeah, yeah, we're making a bunch of money off the online program too." It's taken off. But I did it almost more for the fact of, like, I'm getting too comfortable and figured out too much over here, like, it's nothing new over here. We
Time
just
to
keep
shake it up.
out. Time to learn something new, time to put on a white belt and
Yep.
step into a new zone, and so yeah, I'm trying to do it. In this case, I figured out how to do it without, leaving, so for once, maybe I didn't leave the company, you know, no promises, who knows? I'm learning to hold my plans loosely, but yeah, yeah, jokes aside, it's been an awesome way to kind of start from scratch, and start a whole new journey, this time in parallel with my other journey, so, yeah,
Yeah. I was gonna ask you what's next for you, and that's
and
definitely the
there it
online
is.
stuff. I mean, it'll be passive income, it'll be scalable, it'll be, like,
You got it.
brand new amazingness for your
And and
business.
and really, you wanna zoom way out. The dream is that these smaller businesses, this small to mid-size are doing these
Mhm.
guys,
More
will
accessible.
use this stuff and it will grow and they'll become one of the bigger businesses that might want a kind of custom program someday. I'm like creating fewer
Exactly.
clients for the other side of the business. So
Yep.
it's got all these strategic benefits. And maybe the best one of all for me is it's a total learning curve. Like I'm way outside of my known zone. And so I'm like fully alive and feeling like I'm starting because okay, you know what? This might be a good thing. I've been through enough transitions now that here's what I would say. It's terrifying every time. Every time it's terrifying. You'd think it goes away. No, but you know what it also is? I'm never more alive when I'm stepping into the unknown like this. And I'm really coming to even enjoy that sense of being out in the unknown and trying to figure things out. I have some fundamentals, like some of my identity, my kind of my family, my spiritual life, kind of some of my core stuff that says, okay, I know who I am. And the rest of it, who knows? We'll see what happens. This isn't at risk. And I love and so that'd be my encouragement to folks who are on the edge or just kind of stepping out on that, like, yeah, it's gonna be unnerving but it's
Yeah.
also gonna be maybe the most alive feeling you've had in a long time. It it's glorious. I let's take breaks. Let's take vacations. Maybe you don't sustain that pace all day, every day for the rest of your life, but man, every once in a while, man, it's actually one of the best parts. Some of my favorite memories when I look back on my life are those transition seasons. And what they pushed me to and the conversations I had and the deep questions we processed, the long walks and the journaling and the friends conversations, the new things I figured out, the surprises. They're some of my favorite seasons of life. And yeah, I don't want to be in that kind of high intensity mode all day, every day. But
Yeah.
man, it's not a bad thing. It might be some of the best things.
I love that. Um, what is your what does your ideal client look like for this next venture of online things, and where can people find you if they wanna work with you?
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Legendary Brands Academy is the name of our
Oh,
course. How do you
cool.
we help people build I've been inside all the legendary brands. So I'm like,
Yeah.
this is what I know how to do. So let me help you become one of the greats. So Legendary Brands Academy is how .com.
Yep.
That's how you find it. And then and yeah, who's that for? It's for somebody, excuse me, who's Legendary Brands Academy for? It's for somebody who really wants to be great, not just survive. What we come up with these engines, these little diagrams that kind of here are the systems that all the great brands have. Now, the way you apply it is a little different than the way I would apply it, and that's fine. There's some we give you all the tools to help you translate that into your setting. But it's like, man, how do you not just have regular customers, but raving fans? I mean, the
Yeah.
kind of people who are all in and tell everyone about you and like that's how you get this exponential growth. The customers bring you customers, bring you customers, they buy
Yep.
all your stuff. That's a system. That's literally what I know how to do. I helped other people build it. And now I help these big companies figure it out. I help medium companies. Now we're helping small companies. So if it's somebody who wants to be one of the greats, if you just like trying to make it through and then you'll learn some cool stuff. But no, it's a community of dreamers. It's a community of the people who wanted to be the top of their space. Now, what's encouraging, I'll say, is sometimes people like, oh, all the kind of crazy companies they'll think of are Chick-fil-A, Apple, right? Harley Davidson. These are
Yeah.
very cool companies. They're all consumer sexy products, right? Yeah, yeah. I would say 60, 70% of the people we've worked with are like construction companies, dozens of construction companies, legal services, software, enterprise software, like healthcare. This whole like kind of technical business to business stuff, it actually totally works there. It's just when they do it, they don't get globally famous, right? Like only their customers know. Like if you're a commercial landscaping company, nobody else is going to know you're good except for the companies who hire you. But those people will go nuts and tell all their other business owners so so it's not just for them. It's for the dreamers, sometimes even especially in the categories everyone else gave up on. I mean, that's Chick-fil-A. Fast food 30 years ago was a joke. Right?
Yeah.
Nobody proud of fast food, right?
Yeah.
So so anyone who's got a dream to say, "Hey, mom and pop, medium-sized business, like I wanna go there. I've got the dream. I wanna make a difference. I wanna be one of the greats." But it feels like magic. Like, I don't know, I guess they got lucky. Like, it's not magic. It's a system. There's strategies, there's tools. It's what we just lay it out. It's a step by step, like, here are the 5 systems, and you can do it. So, if you're curious, here's what I would say. If you're curious and wanna check it out, we actually offer a total money back guarantee in the first 30 days. So, 0 risk.
No
Go in, check
risk.
it out, watch all the videos you want, download all the tools you want, go through it. And if at the end of 30 days it's not producing value, no questions asked, we'll just give everybody their money back. It's either awesome or I don't wanna bother you with your time.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're a dreamer who wants to be great, whether you're a podcaster or, run a nursing agency, we've got all those kind of folks in the program and, yeah, come join the community. We're building great brands and would love to hang out with you guys online.
Well, Scott, this has been a wealth of fantastic information for my listeners. And I thank you so much for your time and happy to push people your way in the future as well. A lot of my clients tend to want to keep learning, keep doing. It's a matter of I help them identify what that is. It's not been as clear to some people as it has been to you. But oftentimes starting another business is the answer. So I'm really glad to have this resource in my back pocket to send them to if
Yeah.
that's going to be the case. Why not build with the leading brands? Why not lead
I mean,
with
if you're gonna
their
do it, right?
strategies?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Well, again, but thank you so much, Scott. Really
Thanks.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
This podcast is sponsored by Good Morning Freedom, my retirement coaching firm. I help executives and professionals plan the non-financial part of their retirement, like how to discover new purpose and how you want to spend your time. I offer a one-on-one coaching retirement blueprint package where we work together to discover some new avenues of exploration for your Act 3. This coaching is completely custom and will provide you with a ton of resources and support as you transition to this new stage of life. For all the details, please go to goodmorningfreedom.com/services.